whoever the illustrator is deserves some praise. The illustrations are good.
Excellent. Let's see here. So, welcome to another Sunday Superversive live stream. I am your host, Ben Wheeler, joined by my co host, Anthony Marchetta. Anthony, how are you doing today?
I have had a lovely day. I hope you have as well.
I have had a better Sunday than I've had most of the weeks I've been. Did some workouts, had some fried chicken, uh, worked. So, I don't know why I keep calling this Marymae and the Witch's Flower, and it's not. It's not that at all. In fact, it's entirely. Um,
Yes,
uh,
it is nothing like
it
that
is
movie.
nothing like that at all. Uh, and April A.M. Freeman will be joining us soon-ish. She unfortunately was kept in traffic, but I will continue on to struggle for these various things and just sort of chat. Mary May and the Witch's Flower is a Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! I can't do it. Mary May and the Nightmare Man is a fantastic little story with a lot of childish things in it, but it feels good. And even though I basically read half of it in a couple minutes, it is perfect for any child. I think you were saying what, 8 years old?
That's my guess. I've read probably as much, if not less, than you, because you apparently can read faster than I can. I don't know. Uh,
I taught myself to
so,
speed read when I was in college for no reason. I've never actually used the skill except for stuff like this.
uh, so here's what I can get out of Mary May and the Nightmare Man. The very little bit of it that I have read. Uh, I mentioned it to you immediately after looking at it. I'm quite impressed by the book. It's always good when I could say this about people who are quote unquote on our side, because let's face it, there are sides here. Who are we kidding? Uh, so
Mm-hmm.
for people who are on our side and in the superversive camp, it is definitely always a nice thing when I don't need to pretend to like something or pretend that something is better than it is, or something like that. Uh, Mary May and the Nightmare Man is not only just a nice idea for a story. Mary May has to go and rescue her imaginary friend who went missing, which is a nice idea, but it is also quite well written in a storybook style. Has good illustrations.
Oh,
Uh, this
absolutely.
is This is just a quality book. This is a book that I could see absolutely being popular among, young children. That I could see having on a bookshelf. That you could easily see sold in a big box bookstore. A lot of the times, us indie authors, for our first novels or whatever, we're doing things. We can give you things that traditional publishing can't give you, but not necessarily with the same level of polish. But
Mm-hmm.
this has, if not the same level of polish, close to the level of polish that I would expect from traditional publishing. And that in itself is an impressive accomplishment.
Oh, it's from what I've seen so far, like just in my Kindle viewer, it's fantastic. Um, it's hard to do it when you're doing it through a Kindle viewer, and I haven't had my copy come in yet. But it's good, and the images are perfectly designed. It's fantastic. Uh, so that sort of brings me up a question. Even though it's not really a horror story, it does have wolves and robots and chainsaws and all, but not chainsaw men, sadly, and all these different things. And it sort of leads me to a question, an idea, a wondering if I could. What sort of horror did you have in your childhood, reading wise?
I'm a badass. I didn't read a lot of badass ASK. I didn't read a lot of horror, didn't watch a lot of horror. I did read. I'll tell you what I can remember reading. The first and basically only horror I've ever really enjoyed in my life was in middle school. Like, I think it might have even been on Halloween. I just went to the school library, got a book of Edgar Allan Poe short stories, and read that. And I've been a Poe fan ever since. Uh,
Hmm.
so middle school me would have said Edgar Allan Poe. Adult me also says Edgar Allan Poe. I did watch Are You Afraid of the Dark, which frequent listener JD Cohen recently wrote about on his own blog. Uh, I remember absolutely none of it, but I remember liking the show. But I cannot recall a single episode of it. But I do remember liking the show. I did not like the Goosebumps books. I honestly, I just thought they were bad. So there's no secret there. There's no political statement. There's nothing else to it. Books were quite bad.
I dig it.
But
Uh,
I did like you.
mhm. Go for it.
I read Edgar. That's it. That's all I have.
So,
Ben,
yes,
Ben, can you hear me?
yes, Anthony, you know that your mic just all of a on occasion just like dumps all your words onto me at once, and I just have to sort of let it ride, or else I interrupt you. Except it's not really interruption so much as it is trying to brook the flow. I've been up since
I do
5:30.
know that. I
So
do know that. That's what. It's
yeah.
annoying.
So I also read Edgar Allan Poe as a kid. I actually didn't touch Lovecraft until I was a little bit older. I'm gonna break open a Monster Energy in a
I've
minute.
been recommended Lovecraft strongly by a few people, and I've tried to read him, and I just got bored quick and stopped. Uh, I'll probably give him a shot again one day. My friend, I vaguely remember. I think that his favorite Lovecraft story was "The Color Out of Space,"
Hmm. Did he
but
watch the movie?
I don't think he did. I
That's a
don't.
pity. I would love to know his opinion. If that's his favorite, how did he take the adaptation of it? I did enjoy Edgar Allan Poe there and a few other ones. There is a fantastic illustrated like best of Poe that I need to get my hands on. That includes things like the Mask of the
Oh,
Red
really?
Death and stuff like that. Oh yeah, the illustrations were always my favorite part. Like the wording was great, but like the way they tied it into it. There's also Hop Along. Do you remember that one?
Yes, I remember that. I do.
Oh, that was
Uh,
so horrible, so wonderful, so
so
terrible, so.
so many of Poe's stories. Yeah, so many of them stuck in my head. The one that I remember the most, that stuck in my head the most. I was never a huge fan of Poe's poetry, except for The Raven. I did quite like The Raven. Was not a fan of The Bells. Was not a fan of Annabelle Lee. Uh, I liked The Raven a lot though. However, the short story, or technically novella, I guess, but of Coe's that had the biggest impression on me was The Fall of the House of Usher. And, I'm hardly in the minority here. I think that if you did a poll of Edgar Allan Poe fans, The Fall of the House of Usher would probably, though not by a huge margin, but probably rank as his best story or his most
Yep.
popular story. I don't think it would win by a huge margin because he has several very popular stories, but I think it would probably win. It's the most critically acclaimed. It's kind of the crowning jewel of gothic horror. Uh, and the most amazing thing in retrospect about the fall of the House of Usher is that when you reread it, you realize that like almost nothing happens in the entire story. Uh, he shows up, his friend acts creepy, then eventually the sister shows up and he leaves. And that's the fall of the House of Usher. That's the story.
I, I, there's so much more to it, though.
There is. Oh, I'm not. This is not even slightly a criticism. I'm just pointing that out. It's fantastic. I love the fall of the House of Usher. That wasn't meant as a criticism. That was just something that I noticed. That I mentioned this about the Magnus archives, and it's worth noting that there is something to the idea of horror being more about creating an atmosphere, and a sense of dread and tension and all of that fun stuff. But uh, yeah, several Poe stories really stuck in my head. I never liked Black Cat very much. Uh, I always found the Telltale Heart a little bit overrated, though it did make me appreciate the SpongeBob episode uh, that parodied it a little bit more.
I'm low key
Where
angry
it's
because you brought in SpongeBob to this. But it does have a
you should
decent
be
amount
happy.
to it.
I have
Oh, yeah?
no apol. I refuse to apologize. It's never a mistake.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Never. It's never a mistake. I refuse to
Okay.
apologize.
If you're gonna be like
No,
that.
they had the great they had the great episode where Mr. Krabs gets SpongeBob squeaky boots, so eventually the boots are so squeaky that Mr. Krabs steals them and buries them under the floorboards. But he starts hearing everybody squeaking, and he loses it at the end and like rips up the floorboards and shows him the boots.
Wow.
Uh, and I did not get that as a kid. And after I read all the Telltale art, like years later, I was watching and said, "Holy shit, this is a parody of the Telltale Heart." Like that's actually amazing. But
Right.
that I remember. The Fall of the House of Usher, I remember very vividly. The Mask of the Red Death, I remember very vividly. That's underrated. The Mask of the Red Death. That should be talked about more, if anything. That one is scary, scary, scary.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely. Hold on.
Poe himself is probably within like the top, one of the most influential authors ever. He's like the father of or grandfather of like three different genres. Uh, and he
Wait,
was
hold
an
on.
influential.
Detective fiction, and what are the other two?
Uh, Gothic horror, not the first, one of the earliest and biggest, and science fiction. His novel The narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, was an incredibly influential science fiction novel. If you look it up, like so many people cited the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket as an influence, which I've never read, by the way, mostly
It
because that title makes it sound unbelievably boring.
is. Yes. Actually, it does. It unironically does. I need to look it
Just
up, though.
apparently, yeah, it's like an incredibly influential story. And Gothic horror, he was not the first, but he was one of the biggest, and most influential. And of course, detective fiction. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle references Dupin in a couple of Sherlock Holmes stories.
Mm-hmm.
I had that. I've had that debate with people before whether Conan Doyle or Poe should rightly be called the father of the detective genre. I would argue Poe. Uh, Poe certainly came first. I get that people were really influenced by Sherlock Holmes and Conan Doyle, but Conan Doyle's stories were very obviously patterned off of the Dupin stories. Now, granted, the Sherlock Holmes stories are better than Poe's Dupin stories, as a rule.
Mm-hmm.
The Purloined Letter was pretty good. Because the
Yes.
Purloined Letter had a good twist, and Conan Doyle actually stole the twist from in the Purloined Letter in his novel *The Sign of the Four*. The Like seriously, it's something I noticed. The solution of in *The Sign of the Four*. So, guys, I'm about to spoil 200 and something year old stories. So, spoiler warning. Yeah. If you haven't read it in the hundred some odd years that they've both been written, now's your chance to tune out and come back in. But anyway, so the big twist of the Purloined Letter, which I think is admittedly a pretty brilliant story in its own way, but the big twist of the Purloined Letter is that they need to search for a letter and they can't find it, and they bring Dupin the problem, and the cop explains to Dupin in meticulous detail how they made a grid of the house so they knew its exact dimensions and searched every inch of the house, how they stopped the dude who had supposedly stolen the letter on the street several times and basically strip searched him, and they could not find the letter. And Dupin hears this whole thing, and you hear it all in meticulous detail. And Dupin says, "Okay, I could get you your letter." And he comes back with the letter. And they ask him, "How did you do it?" And he goes, "Well, the letter was there the entire time. It was just disguised to look like something else." And he's like, "It was pinned to the board. You found it immediately." And that was the twist. And I thought it was a very clever story, and it was very cleverly written because I think it helped. He goes into such meticulous detail of how thoroughly they searched everything that you never really consider that as a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Conan Doyle actually steals this twist in The Sign of the Four, which is a great novel, by the way. Uh, Almost as good as The Hound of the Baskervilles. Really great novel. But at the end of the story, Holmes is searching the Thames for a certain boat that they know is, like the getaway. I can't remember it specifically why, but like it's like the getaway boat of the bad guys, and Holmes is searching for it. And he's, sending people up and down the river, searching all the side paths, side streams of the Thames, and he can't find this boat. Then eventually, Holmes finds the boat by looking at the repair yards. And he goes to a repair yard and he figures out the repair yard altered the look of the ship to look like something else. So if you think about it, it's the exact same twist. They hid the ship to look like something else, but it was there the entire time. And I just thought that was interesting that clearly he must have gotten the idea for that from the Purloined Letter. And he references Dupin later on. Hilariously, he references Dupin to criticize Dupin. Uh, I think that I think Watson says something about Dupin, and like Holmes scoffs and says Dupin was a pretender, was a parlor trick. Yeah, was a joke.
He's not the real detective I am.
Yeah, I think he says something about Dupin's methods, like Watson compliments him, and like Holmes scoffs and goes, what Dupin did was a parlor trick." And then just like to make his point, he does what Dupin did immediately in front of Watson, but better. And then he's just like, "Yeah, that'll show him." Uh,
And Edgar Allan Poe's like, why is he being mean to me?
Honestly, I think it was meant to be a compliment to Dupin. It was just Conan Doyle having a sense of humor about it.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I mean, he knew that Sherlock Holmes was clearly inspired by the Dupin stories, even though Conan Doyle perfected the formula. But whatever. The point is, yeah, the point of all of this is Edgar Allan Poe was an unbelievably influential writer in every sense that the word influential entails.
Mm-hmm.
He was influential in multiple genres, and he was good, which is even more important.
I get you.
And there are many different with Edgar Allan Poe. Honestly, even though Fall of the House of Usher is my favorite, like there are so many great Edgar Allan Poe stories. Cask of Amontillado is great. Mask of the Red Death is great.
Yep.
Telltale Heart is pretty good. I think it's overrated. Uh,
I mean, so here's the thing, like there's a certain level of emotion I can handle in an event, but like it pushed it way over the board. Like it makes sense in the story, but to me it's never really
yes,
done anything for me.
it was never my favorite. Uh, it was definitely never my favorite story. But
But
that said, it's pretty good.
yeah, it is.
The Telltale Heart is pretty good. It's entertaining. And The Kit and the Pendulum, which is weirdly the only Poe story with a happy ending that I can think of. If you think about it, that is the only Poe story that I can think of outside of arguably his Dupin stories, I guess, which, if you want to call them
Mhm.
happy endings, uh, that has a happy ending. And it does. He is rescued at the end of the story. I didn't read that for whatever reason until years later, but so many of these stories are so great. Mask of the Red Death might be my second favorite one, just because the Mask of the Red Death is right up my alley, like such a symbolic and
Yeah.
surreal story. You
So
know,
so for me,
it
like,
also people
uh,
want to make comparisons to the pandemic with Mask of the Red Death, and I just go, no,
no.
shut up.
There's this great Seth Zintek video where he talks about how the Black Plague broke out in this 4X game he was playing, and so he holds himself up in Krakow, and basically invites people over and eats them because they ran out of food. Uh, so he's like he sits
Okay,
down
that's
and
funny.
thinks sits down and thinks about it for a second. He's like, you know what? Maybe I'm not good at this game. I'm sorry. And it's like you just ate a bunch of like noble women. Like, what's wrong with you?
That's pretty
Oh
funny.
well, it's
But
it's good shit
I've seen
stuff.
people try to go, ho ho, the rich people are hiding themselves away while poor people die in the pandemic. Remind you of anything? And I just go, shut up. No,
Yep.
no, it doesn't.
It
It does not remind me of anything. Are you happy now?
That's because the King in Mask of the Red Death has the good sense of not singing "Imagine" by John Lennon. So I absolutely abhor John Lennon and the Beatles, and so I've been calling people who show up with sunglasses, a hat, and a mask the John Lennon special.
I like the Beatles. I like Paul McCartney. I
Paul
hate
McCartney's
John
pretty
Lennon.
based. Like, let's be
How
real.
I hate John Lennon. Yes, I like the Beatles though. I won't lie.
Yeah.
I think the Beatles are good. Uh, however, yeah, John Lennon was just an awful human being in every sense of the word.
Yep.
I honestly don't even think that's really arguable either. I don't think that there is any way, anyone who can possibly argue in favor of John Lennon.
Apparently, his killer, Mark David Chapman, is still alive, and he's trying to get out on parole.
Yeah, you see that sometimes. Charles Manson, this happens all the time with him as well.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that like apparently there's just a lot of people campaigning against his release, but he also claimed he was on a mission from God, and I'm like, yes,
Chad, yes.
Chad, yes.
Like the dude who stabbed the communists in Japan.
Right, exactly. Like the man is a hero. Yes.
I
Uh,
mean,
I'm trying to look for a picture of him, um, where it is, because what he did was oh my goodness, we just dropped like everything, all our subscribers, all our people. What happened? Is it because we kept talking about John Lennon being shot? Did YouTube pull the plug? Ah, well. So,
one day it was going to happen.
yep.
Might as
I'm
well let today be that day.
all right. Just lie back and accept it. No, we're back up. All right, good. Whew, whew. I want the picture. because there's this famous picture of, I don't even know where it is. Never mind. The point is that there was this picture I saw where it's like him and the sunglasses and everything like that. But sadly, it's just not showing up.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Hello.
Yes. Hello.
Hey, so sorry I'm so late.
It's all right. We were just talking about the murder of John Lennon. Um,
Haha, nice.
we were talking about Edgar Allan Poe, and then we made jokes about the Mask of the Red Death, and we said that it's not like the quarantine. And I got to how like people wear sunglasses, hat, and a mask to my store, and I call that the John Lennon special.
Nice.
And that is not even like the most grim thing I've said all day. So we are joined by A.M. Freeman, the author of Marymae. Oh wait, hold on. JB14 says, and I don't know who this is. John Lennon's last words were his wife's surname.
Fantastic. I don't know why, but that's poetic. He died a cuck.
Yes. So sorry about that, Miss Freeman. Um,
That's so yes, best-selling author A.M. Freeman here.
Best-selling author A.M. Freeman, authoress of Marymae and the Nightmare Man. I've gotten it
The
right
number
this time.
one new release fantasy.
The new release in Christian fantasy, absolutely. I've seen the pictures, Miss Freeman. You can't fool me. Uh, but that is quite an amazing feat. Um,
Thank you.
even if Amazon has smacked out both the needs of the entire genre, um, or is actively trying to. Uh, Weirdly, he just keeps on getting up and taking up his bed and walking. I don't get it. What's up with this guy? All right. Sorry, that pun from JB14 set me into a fey mood. Um, we have both greatly enjoyed Marymae and the Nightmare Man, even though we haven't
Oh,
finished
yay.
it. We do like it. It has a great setup. It has great um, beats to it. The pictures are absolutely fantastic. I've got a picture somewhere in my giant pile of stuff um, that I am building around me, and I'll probably carry it on my back like one of those people from the labyrinth. Um, JB14 says my work is done. It is. Thank you. And we see him rise into the heavens. Uh, so let's talk about let's focus on Marymae and the Nightmare Land. The link is, oh my goodness, people are actually leaving our stream. The link
No.
is actually
Don't leave. Come back.
I got lots of fun stuff to say. I'll probably read a portion from it too.
oh, we'll look forward to that. What Maryman and Nightmare Land is a kid's book, but it's quite well written. Anthony judges that it's about right for an 8-year-old. Personally, I am not a good judge of that. I read Arabian Nights
I got
uncensored in the
feedback.
5th grade, so
Yeah,
it's like,
I got
oh,
feedback from other ladies I know with kids when I
oh,
like
good.
describe the premise and stuff, and they said around 7 or 8. You know that's kind of where I'm marketing it. Each
Mm-hmm.
parent like can kind of decide what each child like their kind of tolerances for sort of stuff, because it's not like horrifying. There's some spooky stuff that's got to do with like having hope in the middle of despair. So if they're a little more
Mm-hmm.
sensitive to that, your own judgment there. But yeah, I would say 7 and up is kind of what I've been putting it at. And I guess at some point I need to figure out what the like age reading level is so I can actually answer that question. I didn't like write it specifically for a grade reading level, but I didn't like try and write it too fancy either.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's gotten an amazing response. I've been kind of blown away. Uh, it's nothing like New York Times. list or anything, but as a pretty like new indie author, it's been really incredible to see. Uh, and everyone's been enjoying it. I actually, as we were driving home, I found my very first review of it, and it made my heart so happy. I'll see if I can pull it up and read it. Um, it was someone tagged me on Facebook and said that my book was mentioned in it. And I've gotten one 5-star rating, but I haven't seen the review come in on Amazon yet, too. Um, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I wrote this 6 years ago. Uh, and when I was a teenager, first like really trying to dedicate myself to writing, I would sit there and like dream about like one day I could be an author and like people could get my book and like get all excited about the prospect. And then since I've been in the writing world for about, I would say, 4 years, because I had my first short story published when I was 18. So I've
Mm-hmm.
been in the kind of that sphere. So I don't feel like I'm nothing special just because I published a book. Like I know plenty of other people that have. So in that sense, like you know,
I think both of us have.
I'm a little more mellow
Right.
on that sense. But it's been so cool. I can't believe like how you know at the same time like nothing can be cooler than having a kid. Um, but still, it's like still pretty cool. Still pretty cool.
Ah, yes.
And I'm really
Jotaro
happy.
Kujo, who we call Jojo affectionately. Uh, he's gonna grow up and it's like, oh, how you doing, Jojo? Shut up. It's
Excuse me, Ben.
was that
Ben.
what what?
Only his mother is allowed to call him Jojo.
I have way too many Joes in my life, so I call him like Jotaro might be better
Jotaro. All right.
because I know. Yeah, he's Jotaro. Too many JoJos and
Right.
just Joes in my life.
You know,
um,
you're basically guaranteeing this kid's gonna have like a mythic destiny, right? Just
yeah, I'm
saying.
fine with that.
He
uh,
could live a long life. He could be the Joe. Maybe he'll be like the Joseph.
right now he's just chewing on a banana and staring. Well, like
Oh, that's
a
fair.
little fake banana. He's got a simple life right now. But
Right, right.
let's see. Would you like to hear my very first review?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is here I'll see if I can drop the link in the chat to the guy's blog. I think he has a couple other
Send it to me
reviews in that
through
mode.
Discord and I'll post it for you.
Okay, let me see that. Um okay, I'll see if I can post that first.
Like with Fantastic Schools, with reviews, I've been desperate because that was like my first bestseller, and like I'd be like, "So, what'd you think of Doomgarden, reviewer? You didn't mention it in your review." Yeah, Doomgarden was there, and I'm like sitting back, like wide eyes, like
Oh,
all around me are familiar.
familiar face. I'm so sorry, Ben. That's so sad. It's
Here's the
okay.
link. By the way, I have.
All
I was so spoiled with God Robot.
right. I was spoiled with Forbidden Thoughts.
Right.
Yeah,
All right, so I don't see the name of the fellow, but I think his blog's called The Wright Geek.
Mm-hmm.
And so he writes, um, this book strongly invokes the silly stories my brother and I used to make up as bored little kids. Pirates, dinosaurs, chainsaw battles, a heroine who, upon confronting the big bad, essentially calls him a poopy head. Yeah, the author here doesn't bother with sense making. Instead, she's having fun. And there is a crystal clear purity to it all that needs to be experienced, appreciated. Definitely pick this up if you want something happy and imaginative and hopefully to read to your younger children. I think most kids will immediately take to the plunky Marymae.
An excellent and glowing review.
So it's been a lot of fun. I guess I'll kind of run through the timeline real quick. It's been a fun week. I didn't get as much like prep work done ahead of time as I'd wanted to, as far as these kind of promotional things. And so I pretty much spent like all day Wednesday, you know, working on it between taking care of Vlad, and it was a little tiring because I was like, trying to do it all at once and like post everywhere. Um, and also I've been working on getting for my email list, which I'll also send you the link to that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna do a bunch of the behind the scenes of like talking about when I wrote it. It was kind of looking back. It's interesting the time that I wrote it, and like what I was kind of thinking and feeling back then, and even like dug back on my blog to like a couple times that I mentioned when I was writing the story. Um, and so I'm gonna try and do some like behind the scenes of when I wrote it and the whole process of when I found the illustrator and working out with her and running the Kickstarter. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll hopefully have some of that coming out in the next couple weeks. Just some cool behind the scenes of it. Uh, but the launch itself, launched it Wednesday and did really well, and it held for like about 3 days in the top for new releases, and it got as high as number 3 on best selling.
Nice.
And then so that was really great. I think I need to check again. Last time I checked, I had sold like 77 copies online over the especially those 3 days. I'm not sure if I've had any more Kindles bought yesterday. But then yesterday, well, on Friday, I had a local little kind of book launch. I rented a little room at a local kind of coffee shop juice place and told all my local friends about it and had it set up to do a little reading and talk about it uh, and like give away a book. Uh, so all my like local friends knew about it. I know several of them messaged me like day of saying they got stuff that came up. And so I got there, got everything set up. Only 2 people came, but that's okay. It was still fun. My grandpa also showed up, which was the surprise. I like was walking in, and my grandpa, who lives in Georgia, was there, and I was like, "Oh, hello, grandfather." uh, so I guess he just wanted to go on a trip and need to take his car on a drive. So he drove up just for like the day and was there, and then had dinner with us and left the next day. So that was fun. Um, so I sold like 2 books there to the 2 people. And then
Hey.
yesterday, and I totally forgot to do the giveaway until after they left and already got a book. So I still drew a name and told my one friend if she wanted one of the art prints, I'd give her an art print instead. Um, and then yesterday was probably one of the funnest days of the launch. I was a vendor at like a local kind of outdoor. Ah, don't grab that. I need that. Don't smile. That's mine. Thank you. You. Where's your banana? Um, so it was a local, just kind of little farmers market, outdoor vending thing. Uh, it was from 11 to 5, and man, 11 to like about 2 o'clock was like packed with people. It was like nonstop. Um, a ton of fun. I love being able to interact with people. Got really good at my elevator pitch for sure. All
Excellent.
my my years of selling like 1,000+ Girl Scout cookies and being a little like hard hitter, bantering with people, doing my sales and all that really paid off. And it was just so much fun. There was at least 2 girls that came up that are also kind of aspiring writers. One of them I think was like 9, and she was like all giddy over the fact of like meeting an author, and I signed a book for her. Um, and then the other one was 16, which is the age of when I wrote Marymae. So I chatted to her for a while and gave her my card so she could like reach out to me if she had any questions or wanted to find like resources for writing, because really one of the biggest things is being able to have other writers and connections within the writing world, especially on the indie side. And Jaji has pretty much been my like connection and like mentor since I was like 15. So I'll be happy to like pass along that if I can. And then just other things like um, some people, there's like I think 2 people that came up and like saw the book and just like bought it straight away. I realized I had to like as people walked by, do something kind of draw them in for a second, like, oh, this is my illustrated novelette, and they're like, oh, you wrote that? I'm like, yes, I'm sitting at a table with only this book. It is mine, yes. um, but it was so much fun, and there, just lots of fun conversations with people. Um, there was one little girl I read like the first like paragraph or two to, and she was like trying to grab the book. She was like, I want to read it. I want to know the rest. And other cute things like one person bought it to read to their special education class. I think there was a lady that got it because there's either like siblings or step siblings that live in different households, and they're a boy and a girl and kind of different ages, so they don't have a lot to relate on. And so the mom was getting it so the brother could read to the sister over the phone, because that's the only way they really like talk or hang out. And so that was really just stuff like that. Had a great time. Was really exhausted. I think I sold like maybe 13 copies that day. Um, and so I'll have to look at my numbers again, but I've sold probably just under 100 copies total, and so far everyone's had like a really great response to it. So I don't know. It's cool. It's like I don't know. It's neat. It's fun. I'm like, oh wow, this is cool.
And it is.
So yeah, especially as a fresh indie author, um, I'm very humbled by it. And hopefully I can. I think it'd be cool to write a trilogy. Get two more Marymae books. I don't want to like force anything, but if I think of a good way to make it a little trilogy, write the other two, um, and maybe eventually compile it into like one kind of thicker book with some extra artwork. Yeah, that's kind of something I'm bouncing around. My next project's a different story, but I'll probably revisit Marymae, especially if it continues to be a big hit.
Absolutely. And I hope it does too. Um, I know YouTube might be a little bit young, but I remember when they started subverting the fairy tales and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, what is this? No irony? Be still my beating heart. It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
oh yeah. That was what the reviewers said, crystal blue purity. Ah, such a good way. It's supposed to be just fun. Just fun, but with a lot of heart, If you want some action adventure with a girl with a little bit of sass, a big chainsaw and a lot of heart, Mary May's for you.
That's
I
what
think
I.
my other elevator pitch was like you know, lots of adventure and oh, what was it? Forgetting it now. It was like my main line. It was I would tell people that it's a really fun action adventure book, and it's got this underlying theme of having hope even when things are scary, which I think that really is the heart of the book and Mary May's character.
Wunderbar. If you'll forgive me for using German. So,
It's okay.
so with Mary May, you said you've been working on this since you were younger. What sort of inspired you to put it out at this time in this era?
So main reason was I finally found an artist that matched what I wanted. I've been, sitting on it for a while and had other projects, and I didn't want to put it out till I had those like awesome to go with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened last year, beginning of last year. I met an artist at a local event when I was in Pensacola, and we became good friends. Well, we started talking, work, kind of pitched my idea to her, and we started working on it together. Became good friends. I still miss. Um, I love her art style, and like she just so perfectly was able to capture what I was looking for. So we got that started beginning of 2019. My original plan was to do the Kickstarter in the fall of that year, but I had just moved twice, and she was having her baby in the fall, and it was a pretty busy time. I was tired from being pregnant too, so decided to wait till after the holidays. And then I kind of ran into the deadline of like, all right, I'm gonna have a baby in the spring. If I want to be able to get the Kickstarter do it run, I better. It's like now or never. So I worked my butt off, getting it all set up in like most of January and February. Ran it, had a baby like 2 weeks after it finished, and then there was a pandemic. Um, so been a bit busy, but I knew I was going to be needed a bit of a timeline for getting it done after the Kickstarter, so I set it for November just so I didn't have to like stress out over. I could just piece by piece get it done. Got the book all together and actually sent them out in September. No, October. Sorry, sent them out in October. Wait, is it October? Gosh,
It is
yeah.
October, sadly.
Okay, yeah. All right, beginning of October, I sent it out, I believe. So yeah, it was mostly finally found the artist and just wanted to like not delay anymore. Like, I love this story and I've always wanted to be able to share it. So I was like, all right, just gonna buckle down. There was a little bit of like kind of hesitation sometimes, like, oh, am I gonna have enough time to like fully get the Kickstarter going good? But I just kept, like, don't look back, just do it. Dive in, don't hold back, get it done. And it worked out, and now we're here.
Yes. The pinnacle of the Superversive universe. The Sunday's live stream.
And it definitely is my most superversive work. It's probably my favorite character too. She's just
Oh, yeah.
such, and looking back at when I wrote it, my sister was 4 at the time, and I think I got a lot of inspiration for the character herself, and also Marymae's love for her little sister from my little sister, and my little sister's 10 now, so it's like it's crazy how time goes.
Mm-hmm.
That's my microphone. You think you're funny.
Yes, quite funny.
Do you have any? What were your thoughts on it, Ben? Do you have any questions? Having uh gone through some of it at least.
I and it's a book a little under my level, but I enjoyed it quite a bit for what it was, and I definitely consider it something necessary for young children to read and have in the library. I could see how it would be great for special needs kids as well. Um, it's one of those things that just kind of hit all the right notes, even though I wasn't, giving it the attention it deserves. I was still noticing how it hit all the right beats when it needed to hit them and how everything sort of fit together with the illustrations, how the formatting was, how it's just like perfect.
Thank you. The other interesting thing with it, especially if I go back and write more, is I wrote it quite a while ago, and I feel like I'm gonna have to like study my own writing to make sure I can get that same feel. I've noticed when I've gone back to works that I wrote years ago, uh, it's hard to find. I have to be careful to like improve the kind of some of the technical things or things that I've improved on or it up, but not mess with the heart of it. If I get too trying to like improve it, I can actually kind of take away the rawness of the original story um, that I wrote, with Marymae since it was so long ago, and I was probably more innocent back then too. I think helped keep that kind of whimsical uh, pureness of it. So if I write some more, I'll have to really like dig back to that inner child um, for a bit to find that same feel.
Absolutely. Uh, my inner child. I kind of hit it with Tears of Elfland, but this is like completely different and much more streamlined in its purpose and um, in how it's presented. Like it's not something everyone really talks about because most of us in our circles write to the adult population, or at least those children who are disturbingly quiet, sit in the back and read books at an adult level that they perhaps shouldn't. Um, you know, writing to your audience is just as important as a whole bunch of other stuff that people talk about. If you buy the book that promises all the secrets of writing revealed to you, the real number one thing is write something that will appeal to the audience. Like this will appeal to kids and to people who want to see a plucky little girl chainsaw wolves, robot wolves,
Yeah.
which is certainly in my interest wheel. Um,
Yeah.
but then again, I'm just such a fan of chainsaws.
I
Let's
mean,
see.
you can't like, what's better than a girl with a bit of sass and a big chainsaw? I mean,
Hmm.
I think the other way I like to convey it is it is simple in what it is. And I like to say, things like, Wizard of Oz, or like maybe Narnia, maybe a little bit similar to uh where it's technically like kids, like a kind of kids literature, but at the same time it's a good story and it's enjoyable, and so anyone can enjoy it. Like I enjoy listening to the Oz books. Um, I'm not expecting I'm expecting it to be a kid's book, but I'm expecting it to be a fun, enjoyable book that I still listening to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a little bit of something for everyone. There's a fun, little girl protagonist. There's chainsaws, for the boys and stuff that, you know, enjoy that kind of stuff too. And there's if you're an adult and just want, something fun, it's that too.
I dig it.
Yay, I'm so glad. Just makes me so happy everyone enjoys it. If I can, in my writing career right now, if I can just like break even on my expenses, and like any extra I can invest back in, to produce more marketing and books, as long as I can do that and I can share my work and people enjoy it, like that's what I'm aiming for.
Mm-hmm.
So my thought on it when I was reading through the so far little bit, but I will be reading more of it. The little bit of Marymae that I read was I said it to Ben immediately. Like, this is an exceptionally well, if this is the right word, a well polished book. So the thing is that us superversives and indie writers and people in our sphere, we have certain advantages over traditional fiction. Or I should say, the traditional publishing industry. Uh, the main one being that we will sometimes tackle topics, and we will, try things that they won't try and they won't do. And there's a freshness to our works, but it often does come across as unpolished. Now, there's a trade. So I would say that this was definitely the case with my work. I certainly do try and do things and, attempt things that I think that sometimes you wouldn't see with traditional publishing. But at the same time, I don't have the industry behind me, the machine behind me that can polish these works down to fine finish, nor do I have the experience yet, just not having written as much. Mary May and the Nightmare Man, for somebody, this is your first real major work that you've published. I know you've published short stories before this, but for the first major work that you've published is an exceptionally polished work. It has the polish, I think, that it would be right at home with in the traditional publishing industry. That there is a level, if it makes sense what I'm saying, a level of craftsmanship here that I found very impressive when I read it. This feels like something that could I when I say that it could come out of traditional publishing, I don't mean that it could come out of traditional publishing like, they would publish something like this necessarily. It's probably not, subversive enough for that. But it's something that could come out of traditional publishing in terms of you feel like an author who has polished her craft down to a level that they would consider, normal and acceptable, if that makes sense. Ben, do you agree with what I'm saying there?
Yes. The end product is very polished. Uh,
I
as I'm doing more work of it myself, I'm starting to get an eye for things that are supposed to look like what it's supposed to look like.
I'm incredibly humbled, guys. Thank you so much. That's really wonderful to hear. I think having running the Kickstarter and making sure I had the funds to hire people that could, as far as the formatting and editing went, really helped. And then I tried hard to find a balance between, not taking forever, but having a certain standard and not settling. Um,
Mm-hmm.
when it came
Mhm.
to, making sure the manuscript itself was edited, and of course I also had years to kind of slowly find all the mistakes, um, as far as just small little errors. But I believe I had Ben Switsky
Well,
do the line editing. I think Jaji also went over it, just to help find any, general edits. I had Daniela Mick. Let me look up her name. I'll do all the shout outs for everyone that helped create the book in the professional state it's in. Um, I'm trying to remember her last name, but Danielle, she runs the specs. Hang on, shout out. Let me page. There it is. Ackle McPhail, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she did a great job with the formatting, and her husband did the putting the words onto the cover and that side of it. Um, and there was also small things, particularly the cover, trying to get the design and the color for the background, that kind of green color. I had the hardest time finding that color. We kept going over different variants, um, and then it was also hard finding the right color for the text itself. That's now pink. And there was times when we were doing that where I'm like, maybe this is good enough. Um, but I'd be like, no, like a lot of times with different aspects of putting the book together after the Kickstarter, I wouldn't let myself say good enough. I'd give it at least another more day or two, keep thinking about it, try something else until I found something that I was satisfied with. So I had some really good people behind me helping me put it together. And then I just, didn't want to rush it. I wanted to make sure it was a good quality product. So I really, really appreciate your guys' words on it. And I'm so glad that it's something that can be, looked at and seen as a really good quality product.
well, it's something that I look at and I compare it to my earlier works, which were the first two major ones were God Robot and Tales of the Once and Future King. Now, God Robot for an indie work, I got in with Castalia House, and this was never been confirmed by anyone, and I don't care to ask, but I assume that the reason they agreed to publish it was because John C. Wright, as in that John, or Jaji said something to Vox Day about it, which is why he agreed to publish it. This has never been confirmed, and I don't care to and I don't care to ask, and I'm guessing that's why. And that was a coup. So it still has right now 40 reviews on Amazon, which for an indie work by an author where this was literally the only other things I had published at that point were short stories in Jason Rennie's Sci-Fi Journal. Uh, Having 40 reviews on it is like massive.
Yeah.
That's very rare, and so I was spoiled for that in a big way. But and God Robot, for what it was, a small anthology type story, did very well. However, I look back on it and I look at the writing, and the same with Tales of the Once and Future King and with my early short stories, and I could see, the lack of polish.
I
I
also
could
forgot to
see in
shout
there.
out. I forgot to shout out
Go ahead.
Jason. Um, I think originally I was gonna have Danielle do the ebook format, but she wasn't able to get the pictures uh in the places I needed them. They would have been at the end of the chapters instead, and kind of would have worked out funnier. So Jason was able to successfully get the ebook format looking great. So props
Nice.
to him as well. All wonderful people
I'm
to
not
work with.
surprised.
He's good. He's definitely good, and I believe he is. I know I saw somewhere on a post he offers editing or formatting service, I should say. So if anyone's looking for that, hit him up.
Mm.
He has published like what, I forget how many was on Super when a press when it was still here, but he's got quite a good bit of experience doing that.
Oh yeah. Like it's he he did it quite a bit, and I was learning quite a bit myself. And I'm always looking forward to next projects from Superversives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in
Hmm.
the indie world, it's it's like one of the key things is having good connections and good people you can work with. Uh, and then holding yourself to a standard. Not being embarrassed to be like, hey, can you tweak this one thing? Like, I know I've asked you to do five other things that I keep forgetting until I think of them, but you know,
Well, God, that's how God Robot came about. Legitimately. So the idea. I'm not. I promise I won't derail this. This is very short. But I literally God Robot was a matter of me emailing random authors who I had never spoken to before and saying, "Want to be in my anthology?" Uh, like
I
cold emailing. I didn't know these people. I never talked to them. I had no connection to them outside of the very very vague connection that I had been published by Jason Rennie. And I didn't know Jason well at the time. Jason was, he published a couple short stories of mine. So I wasn't even like friends with Jason at the time. But I had read their stories and I wanted to put together an anthology of stories. So I emailed them and said, want to be in it? And everybody said yes. One person ended up dropping out for unrelated reasons. But the next person who went in, filled in seamlessly, and everybody who I asked said yes, which was amazing. So what I'm saying is you're absolutely correct. That's also why I'm hosting the Superversive live stream right now. The Superversive live stream is very much Ben's baby, and I think it would be highly unfair to call it anything else, honestly. And I had mentioned to Ben a few times, like in ye olden days, that I thought that we would do well together as co-hosts because we agreed on enough for our conversations to have substance, but disagreed enough for it to be interesting. And
yeah.
Ben agreed, and yeah, and Ben agreed, and he didn't talk, and we basically stopped talking about that for a while. Then Ben stopped doing the live stream for a while for a variety of reasons, and COVID hit, and we were all very bored. And I like messaged Ben and said, "Want to do the Superversive live streams? I'll co-host with you." And Ben was just like, "You know what? Why not? That let's do it."
I
And
looked up at the
and that's
sword
how.
on my wall. The music rises. Yeah, let's do it.
So now I'm just like, so anyway, now I'm the co-host of the Superversive live stream.
Yay!
How did I become the co-host? I asked. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the reason. I just
There's
said to Ben, "Want to do it?" And Ben was like, "You know what? I can't think of a good reason to say no."
a lot of times, like, there may be sometimes asking can hurt, but most of the time not. And there's a funny moment when I was uh filming clips for the Kickstarter little, the little movie video for the Kickstarter. And I had to film
Hmm.
some clips of me speaking to the camera, which was surprisingly hard to like try and know all your lines and stuff. And one of my outtakes was me just being like, "Let's just do it. Let's just do it." And I was just doing this funny little dance, hyping myself up, just like, "Let's just do it. Like, go for it." And I think that's key sometimes in pursuing like doing the indie stuff. Just persistence in your writing. Just always trying to have some sort of persistence in writing in your craft. Long, long ago, when I first met John C. Wright, I was big fans of them and emailed Jaji, and then she emailed me back, and we became friends. And then I was like, "Hey, we're gonna be in the DC area," and she's like, "Come over to her house." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And then I met John and everything, and I was like freaking out. And I asked him for if he had like one piece of writing advice, and he said persistence, persistence, persistence. Maybe a little bit of talent, persistence, persistence, a bit of luck, and persistence. And really, like that's what it takes. Um, you just keep at it. You don't want to like run yourself into the ground or you know
Hmm.
do it without any sort of like thought or caution, but just keep at it. And
Yes,
don't be afraid to reach out.
The Wrights came to New Jersey one day. There was one on one Saturday. just Jaji announced like on the Friday beforehand, Jaji or John announced on their blog, "Hey, we're gonna be in New Jersey at a book signing," and I messaged them on the blog. I said, "Wait, you're serious?" I said, "Then I'll be there." And the next day, I drove out. Probably, I want to say I was going to drive myself, but I mentioned to my parents that they were going to be there, and my sister wanted to meet them then. Then my brother said, "Oh, if you're going to go down, then I'll go." So my dad offered to drive all of us. So I said, I won't say no if you're offering. But so when I say I drove down, it wasn't. What I'm trying to say is it wasn't actually me that was driving, but it was like a 50-mile drive out or so, and 50 miles I figured out a while ago means many different things to many different people. To uh, some people, 50 miles is a really, really long drive. To some people, 50 miles is nothing. I fall somewhere closer to the latter end of that. It's not quite nothing, but it's a drive that I'm willing to do. No sweat. Just, and So I did drive out, and I did meet the Wrights. Jaji was talking about her new Rachel Griffin novel at the time, and it was announced that John would also be talking about Count to a Trillion. But when I got there, it was obvious that it was really more for Jaji, and John just went along. John went along and he brought his book, but the discussion was more for Jaji, which was fine because I had bought and binge read, like, crammed the first Rachel Griffin novel on the way over, so that I wouldn't be too rude. I was rude enough to get him to sign a book I bought, but not buy a book. And in my defense, I was extraordinarily poor at the time. Uh, I did not buy the book there, which would have been like 20 something dollars. And for Jaji, I had no physical copies of her books. I only had ebooks of the Rachel Griffin books, and I had her sign her short story in Tales of the Once and Future Past. Meeting the Wrights, they are lovely people. Uh, they were very warm, very friendly people, and I greatly enjoyed speaking to them. Generally, of the people in our sphere, I've noticed are really, for the most part, quite friendly. John, in particular, does have a fearsome online presence. He was quite polite and basically everybody in our
John is a big ball of like really smart but also ridiculously goofy. My goodness.
I think I've had some sort of argument with him, like us debating some idea every time we've met. And at one point, I offered to give him. Apparently, he doesn't like pizza, and I'm like, yeah, if you read Sheik of Mars, I'll buy pizza for your family. And he graciously said yes. And then he's like, Ben, I hate pizza. When I met him in person, I'm like, do you want some McDonald's? I
I've
don't
had
want.
knockdown drag out arguments with John online, where I've mentioned this before, but this is why I get the idea. I've talked to some people who go, you don't want to make excuses. Like, just because you're online, it doesn't excuse you from acting morally or like a good person. Yes, this is true. This is absolutely true. However, I do think that there is something to the idea of who you are online does not necessarily reflect how you actually act in person.
And a
Not
lot of
that I'm
times it's just
saying
lost in
John.
translation. Like just it's a different
Exactly.
vibe you get because he's like, when you talk to him, like if you're debating him in person, like he can get very animated, and over line, I think that comes off as more like aggressive than it actually is. Um,
I enjoy
because
it.
yeah, I mean it's great. Like it's definitely fun. I lived at their house for like 2 months to learn all their secrets back in 2017. Um, I think I stayed with my aunt over the weekend because she was down Fredericksburg. But Jaji was like, "Hey, I'm doing a writing course. Do you want to come up for a week?" And I was like, "How about I quit my job and move up there?" And she's like, "Sure." And I was like, "Awesome." Um, And there was one point when I was writing the story for
I
the Mars
remember this
anthology.
actually.
Yeah, the Mars anthology. I was having a lot of trouble with the character. It wasn't quite working right, and I had John absolutely destroy it for me. Like I gave him a section, and he rewrote the character in his own way, and basically pointed out the character was too feminized in a certain sense, that didn't wasn't working, and so I realized to make the story work how I wanted it, it made more sense if the character was a younger boy, and then the emotions and stuff he was doing would make more sense. But I had him totally rip apart my writing, and it was glorious. And I feel
Yeah,
very privileged.
this is all very much a trip down memory lane for me because I remember when I remember you mentioning this when you did this, uh,
Yeah.
and just this whole time of when I was and thinking of what I was writing at the time as well and all of that. Jaji did something similar ish with Tales of the Once and Future King. So Tales of the Once and Future King has this frame story around it, and the idea behind it was that we got criticism for the frame story of God Robot. I would argue, and I still do, that the frame story of God Robot was meant to be was by design very simplistic and straightforward, and not meant to not meant to do much because it was riffing off of the frame story of iRobot, which was very simplistic and basically just an excuse for the stories to exist. But there were people who criticized the frame story of God Robot for being too simple and for various things. So we decided we weren't going to do that this time around. We were going to make this way more ambitious. We had 20 different stories in it as opposed to 9, and our frame story was full novella length, multiple characters, things going on, And my sister and I co-wrote it. My sister collaborated with me on the first 2 books, who is a very good, very talented writer in her own right, uh, who she will appreciate if I get her on one day. Ben, I may have her write one of the Pinkerton stories just because I'll not want to do it one week, but I won't tell you.
Anthony, please. I can't. My
I,
nerves.
you'll
I,
have to guess.
Anthony,
You'll have
please.
You're just gonna go, Anthony. Did you write this story? Not gonna be like, I don't know why you're saying that, Ben. Why wouldn't I write it?
You realize that I'll be able to tell immediately, right? I'll look into it like 3 seconds, and the second it hits dialogue or it's a turn of phrase I don't recognize as yours, I'm gonna be like, "Yep, his sister wrote this one." And then what I'm gonna do? I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna say, Anthony, this is the best one you've written so far. Anthony, this is amazing.
You
Why
know,
can't
you
you write?
say that. You say that, but my sister is a legitimately talented author, and I am sure she would actually do quite a good job with it.
I'm.
I
Mm-hmm.
I. With that said, yeah, don't worry. If I ever have my sister write it, and who knows, but I will let you know. Probably.
You know how stressful the last episode you wrote put me through? Oh my goodness. Oh,
I know.
By the way, I listened to I
I
think the
know.
first 2 so far, and I've enjoyed the Pinkerton, if that's how you say it, right?
the
I've enjoyed the
Pinkertons.
first 2 too.
Yes.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear it.
Damn it, April. You before mine.
What was that?
You stopped before mine. I'm the
I'll get
third.
back to them next time. I need to do
Ah,
got a bunch of laundry to fold. I'll probably listen to it
Now I
more
can't ask you
soon.
though. I'm always curious. I'm trying to get what people think.
I'll PM you or something whenever I listen to the
please.
third one you said you wrote.
Yeah, he's the next episode.
I,
Okay, cool.
yes.
I
We
think
actually. Sorry,
going
go
back to
for it.
the rights for a second, I think one thing is John is a very talented writer, but it's come more naturally for him. So if you ask him for critique on things or why he doesn't like something, a lot of times he can't really give you a constructive answer. Just
Yes.
it just doesn't. Whereas Jaji, since she wasn't innately as she worked really hard to get the skill she has, and she's done a lot of editing and a lot of work with a lot of authors, and so she's much better at pinpointing and giving critique back. I've noticed.
Now, the good news is, so I have published stories by both John and Jaji. And Jaji helped look over what I was getting at with Tales of the Once and Future King was that Jaji looked over a really ambitious frame story, and apparently she gave us very nicely worded, very politely, what was basically a scathing critique of the frame story. Just said like this doesn't work, and we had to completely rewrite it, which we did. And my sister and I, when we read it, we loved it. Uh, it was, we were like, this is the best feedback, probably that I've ever gotten on piece of writing that we've had. And we mentioned this to her, and she was like, I'm really relieved because I was debating whether or not to send this. And then we're like,
She's
please,
so
no.
sweet. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's
I'm
really
like,
amazing at like because they've got the Superversive writing course that I think they're still finishing putting together, and that's the course that I kind of got to do the prototype for when I was up there in 2017, and she's so good at like really helping break down the mechanics of what makes a story and helping identify what needs to be done in a story. And from all the
yes.
times that she's edited, especially new writers' works, I think her biggest thing that she notices as a kind of mistake for new writers is need to put something from the end at the beginning and have like establish the goal or the motivation or have that at the beginning. She's like most of the time she just takes what's like sometimes it'll be really hard slogging through, and then she gets to the end and she's like, oh, that was really good, and then she's like, what do I need, like why wasn't it as interesting at the beginning? And a lot of times it's somehow taking what's at the end and planting that seed at the beginning, if that makes sense. Really better at how to exactly do that,
Absolutely.
but she's so great. Also, on the Rachel Griffin note, it's so funny that the fifth book, which was originally part of the fourth book, but it got too long, so she had to split it, came out this year, and one of the big like plot points of it is that the school's
Yes.
locked down, so people have to be inside. Also, I was a little sad. I ordered a physical copy finally, and I wanted to bring it with me when I went and met up with her for vacation at Shinkatink, and it came like the day we left, and so it was sending it to the post office, and I didn't get it with me to sign it, and I'm a little sad.
I look back on that, and if I ever meet the Wrights again at some sort of book signing, then the next time I will have to buy a book from them, because I look back and I go, "Wow, that was very tacky."
I mean, like, as writers, like, it's nice for people to be able to like buy and sign their books, but like, we're still happy readers that enjoy our work.
Because the book I brought with them, I've realized now, and I did not think of this at the time. In my defense, but I'm looking at it. I have a copy of John C. Wright's *The Mists of Everness*. The first book I read by him was The Last Guardian of Everness, and I bought the sequel.
I need those.
So I own a physical copy of The Mists of Everness. The thing is that I got The Mists of Everness off of Amazon used, and it was a used library book. And I'm looking at it now, and I realize that it's still bound as a library book. So I'm like, I asked him to sign a book that was very obviously bought from a library, meaning not only did I not buy a book from him at his book signing, the book that I did buy did not give him any money. And I look back on that and I go, wow, that was very cringy. I should not have done that. I probably would have been less rude not to bring a book.
Hey, but you still
Because,
enjoyed the story. You could still leave a review. That's almost as good as sales.
well, John actually, the very, very, very first interaction I had with John was him posting a review that I had put online of The Last Guardian of Everness. Uh, so
Nice.
he actually posted my review of it, and he said that he was complimented because I said I was going to buy the sequel, which of course I did. The thing is, though, that I bought the sequel, but I obviously bought a used copy of the sequel that still has the library binding on it. So he did not get money for that. And he signed that book. So I'm like, so I not only did not buy his book, uh, but I also had him sign a book that I very obviously did not give him any money for. And that is very rude.
Honestly, from what I'm told of some of the contracts that publishers were throwing out around that time to relatively unknown authors, it he probably wasn't getting paid either.
No. Well, yeah, Last Guardian of Everness was John's first published novel, and Mists of Everness, was a sequel to that, so he probably was not making a lot of money off of those books.
They are really good books, though.
They are. The Last Guardian of Everness was quite good. It's not my favorite John C. Wright novel. Uh, my favorite John C. Wright novel is Green Knight Squire. I guess if you want.
Yes.
My favorite John C. Wright work is Awake in the Nightlands. Uh, or Awake in the Nightland, I think. Whatever. Anyway, my favorite John C. Wright work is Awake in the Nightland, which, I have to remind myself a lot, is not a novel. They were published separately as separate stories. The thing is that they work so well together and they build on each other so well thematically that it makes more sense to me to view it as one work than as four separate works in an anthology. Uh, that is my favorite John C. Wright work, but my favorite John C. Wright novel is Green Knight Squire. However, Last Guardian of Everness and The Mists of Everness are right up my alley. Uh, they are excellent. As for Jaji, the story, you're absolutely right about like the difference between Jaji and John. The story that I often tell with Jaji is that I invited her to write a story for God Robot, and the reason I invited her is honestly, very frankly about this. I invited her because I invited John, and I figured if I was sending out cold emails to random authors asking them to be in my book, Jaji was a published author. Jaji had good reviews, so it would be rude of me to email and ask John and just not ask Jaji for her story. You know. So I asked, and she agreed, but I had read one thing by Jaji previous to that point. It was a short story in the Sci Fi Journal. Uh, I can't remember the title of it right now. I think it was like technically set in her wider Rachel Griffin universe, but very off to the side. And I hated it. I thought it was terrible. I was amazed that it got published.
Which one
I
was
was
it?
like, I
Do you
can't
remember the title?
remember the title. It was the fifth issue of the Sci-Fi Journal. It was about a mother who has a child with autism who gets
I know
kidnapped
the one
by
you're
the
talking about.
fairies.
That's the Prospero universe. I actually
Hmm.
love that one.
Prospero,
I
thank
don't.
you. Okay.
Yeah,
I did too.
People did like
I
it. People liked it a lot. And I showed it, and my sister, who remember co-wrote God Robot with me, agreed with me that it just was not good. It didn't work. In retrospect, I look back on it and I realize that it is a children's story. And when I read it in that light, a lot of the decisions made in it make more sense to me. But I didn't like it at the time. But we invited her because I figured she was a professional author. She was popular. Even that story, we seemed to be the only people who disliked it. So, clearly there was something we were missing. So we invited her, and she was the first person to send back her finished story in God Robot, and it was a story called Ring of Sounding Brass. And we read the story, and both me and her were absolutely floored because we finished it, and we were like, "Oh my god, this is fantastic!" I'm like, "This is the same." I'm like, "This is the same author, as that first story. Like, where was this? Like, this is terrific."
I love her short
And it was
stories.
just, what was that?
I really enjoy a lot of her short stories. I know in that one, I think Rescue of Mr. Spaghetti or something. I
Yeah,
was not expecting it to go where it did, And then I think Jaji, I know in that one and in the Prospero series itself, which I absolutely love, it goes to a point where you're like, oh my gosh, how are they going to recover from this? And then it somehow does, and it's amazing. And I was like, so was really like, oh my gosh, like, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, I was never a fan of that specific story, but Ring of Sounding Brass is one of my favorite stories in God Robot. And I of course I've read the entire Rachel Griffin series, which I was not obligated to do, so you know I liked it. Uh, I bought the fifth book, I think, the day that it came out, and I read it. Though my opinion of the Rachel
I'm
Griffin
still working
series
on
is
it.
kind of it was a good. I stayed up till one of those like I stayed up till 1 a.m. or something reading the fifth book. The Rachel Griffin series feels very strange to me, and it sort of gets to what I was saying about the divide between polished and not polished. Because on one hand, the Rachel Griffin series is definitely a series that I don't think that would ever get published by the traditional mainstream publishing industry. It's so Christian in philosophy, and there's just something about how it's so superversive in its atmosphere and the way that it's written. But the flip side of it is so all right. I get the impression there seems to be this sort of tradition with the Rachel Griffin series. You have to compare it to Harry Potter, and when you do so, you need to point out that this is better than Harry Potter. And I cannot honestly bring myself to do that, even though I do not like J.K. Rowling.
It
J.K.
sells
Rowling is an
books, though,
SJW.
Anthony. It sells
What was that, Ben?
books. It
Yeah,
sells
right.
the book. I li-
It does.
I tell
It
this
does.
story often. Like I was at Dragon Con, and I was selling her volumes like hotcakes. Anytime I saw a Harry Potter
Oh
cosplay, I'm
yeah,
like,
you did
hey,
mention that.
come
It is
here. I
handy
got
having
something.
something that you can easily and quickly relay to someone to get them an idea of
Yep.
the feel of the book. So
Yes.
like,
If
it's
I
kind of
were
neat
going
shit.
to write a review of it, though, I'll put it to you this way. I do not think that the Rachel Griffin series, even though as much as I dislike Rowling, she's an SJW, I have no interest in defending her, and I basically stopped talking about Harry Potter for that reason. It gets too. First off, people talk about it too much. Second off, Rowling is a rotten human being who does not deserve to be talked about in any case. But if you were to ask me, do I think the Rachel Griffin series is better than Harry Potter? And I were to answer you honestly, I would probably say no. And the reason for this is that even though it gives you something that Harry Potter and mainstream publishing absolutely could not or would not give you, I think that it does lack some of the polish. There's something very strange to me about the last book I read specifically was a good example of this. I felt like nobody was acting like a real person. It was all extremely compelling. I stayed up till 1 a.m. watching it, but I also got the impression it was kind of like how a soap opera keeps you wrapped up in reading and watching the story. Like the whole story is about Rachel's long lost sister has showed up at this party, and now she needs to convince her family to see her. But it felt so weird to me because I felt like nobody was taking this nearly as seriously as they should be taking it, and it did not ring true. Like, she's at this masquerade ball, and I get it. Rachel's a 13-year-old girl, and she's been looking forward to this ball for ages. But when she tells her brother, hey, Peter, that is our long lost missing sister, and I can prove it, why is Peter still at this ball? Why has he not contacted their parents immediately? And yes, they do before the end of the night, but why is Rachel taking the time to dance with people in between with telling her family, by the way, we have a long lost family member. She's here right now. You could speak to her. Like, how are they still at this ball, having fun at the ball? I know that if it were me, I would not care about the ball, especially if I were Peter's age or one of the older siblings. Maybe Rachel, being a 13-year-old and a little bit less mature, and she would be somebody who would be very concerned about this masquerade ball. But if I were one of the older siblings, oh my god, you would not, I could not care less about the ball if I knew I had a long lost missing family member. I would be contacting my family immediately. We would all be sitting down and we would be figuring this out right now, and there would be no distraction. And there's this other thing too where they talk about like the villain, the master, or who might be the villain.
Make sure you don't do any
There's all
spoilers
sorts of
because I
layers.
haven't even gotten to like
Yeah,
that
I won't
part
say
yet.
who it is, who might be the villain or whatever, but they talk about wanting to kill him at some point. And this is fine. I don't have an issue with this because, he's pretty bad, or it seems like he might be pretty bad. But then at the end of the book, they literally, like, this is actually what happens. They just stumble upon him randomly and then decide they're going to try and kill him right there. They don't go looking for him. They don't go anywhere. They just show up and there he is and they go, let's do it. Let's kill him right now. Go. And I was reading it and I'm like, I feel like I'm going insane right now. Like, when did this happen? How did this opportunity show up? And it's weird too because the whole scene itself is quite good. And like every individual scene of the things that happen in the story all work as scenes on their own, but taken as a whole, something about the book just does not feel right to me. And yet, I stayed up till 1 a.m. and I finished it. I'm going to buy the next book probably the day it comes out. So I don't know what that tells you, except that the Rachel Griffin books are quite good and quite addicting. But that's sort of what I mean by polish. Like, I feel like some of this stuff, if it were in traditional publishing, uh, it wouldn't be published at all. But if it were published, I think that a lot of the pacing would definitely be straightened out in ways that they don't have access to those resources and professional editors and people, who do this for a living, that they
I
just
wonder
wouldn't do
how
it.
I wonder how
I
much of
don't
that
know.
would spark from since the Rachel Griffin was a role playing game trying to
Oh,
balance
I'm
like
convinced of this.
events. Yeah, it's yeah. So I haven't gotten through all of it, so I can't comment much. Most of the time the pacing hasn't bothered me. I think I do kind of get the same feeling that like some of Rachel's like thoughts and things. I guess I'm like, okay, yeah, she is a 13-year-old girl. I guess she would like worry about these things. Uh, but yeah, but it's probably partly to do with trying to transcribe the events from a role-playing game.
I am convinced this
Process.
entire book, specifically, that takes place during the Masquerade Ball and is about finding her missing sister. And I am convinced this whole book is a result of that role playing game because all of this is easily explained by the fact that if you're playing a game, you're not going to interrupt what's going on for one character and what they're doing, and you had this ball planned, then you're gonna have the freaking ball because it's a game and people want to do it and they've been planning for it, right? So this whole book, I am absolutely convinced, is a result. The weird to me anyway, and nobody else I've seen has talked about this, so maybe it's just me. But the to me, the weird pacing of this book strikes me strongly as stemming from the fact that this was adapted from a game. And I sympathize a little bit with adapting from different genres and mediums because that's sort of what I'm doing right now with, as Ben will attest, with much frustration in Pinkerton's Ghosts. Uh, Ben can attest with much frustration that the current storyline that I am adapting in my Pinkerton's Ghost is actually something that I came up with like probably years ago at this point. That was originally a supernatural private eye thing about and a detective in the city coming across a mind controlling villain, and now I'm adapting it for the Pinkerton's Ghost. The difference though is that the original version of the story was very much a supernatural, private eye thriller thing when I originally conceived of it. And now I am turning it into I need it to be a horror story.
Yes.
And a horror story and a supernatural thriller are two completely different genres. They're not trying to accomplish the same sorts of things.
They're
And
not
while they're
disconnected, but they're completely different feels.
Yes, they're not disconnected, which is why I think that it can be adapted, and I'm convinced it can be. And so far, Ben hasn't stopped me from doing it, so Ben must not hate it. But
it,
but it's
it
also driving him nuts because he's had to stop me several times. I've been doing it and going, "This is way, I don't care who the big shadowy mastermind is very much, or at least I kind of care, but not really." And he's like, "And I don't really care." And this plot that you're trying to come up with, stop focusing on the plot. What's the horror? And this was like the last one, so I'm trying to come up with the plot. He goes, "All right, so I'm hearing you trying to come up with this plot, but what's the horror?" You know, and
the
this comes from the fact that originally it was, of course, a detective story where I was trying to structure a mystery into it, and that hasn't entirely gone away. But now the important thing is no longer structuring the mystery into it, but adding stuff that's scary
hmm
or at least creepy or unsettling. And I need
yes.
to pivot into making that the priority. And I could see that with Jaji, there is a similar thing possibly that could go on with Rachel Griffin, where originally, what's the idea behind the Rachel Griffin stories? Well, it was part of a game. It had to be fun to play, but not necessarily cohesive as a narrative. That had to all be done in post, and she's done a bang up job of it. I mean, it does work as a narrative. It's cohesive. It makes sense. And it's incredibly entertaining and addictive. Uh, but you do sometimes see like clearly there were things in this story that were developed for a game and not for the regular world. Now, going back or for the regular book. Going back to your book, April, with Marymae and the Nightmare Man, that was the impression I was getting that this was something that I'm like, wow, this has the polish where everything was clearly, what it's intended to be, I think is how Ben put it. Like everything in Mary May and the Nightmare Man is definitely very intentional in the way that it's written, and I don't get that sense of you were trying to do something totally off the wall and then you adapted it that I sometimes get with other indie stuff.
Yeah, it
And
also helps.
with
Mary May is very straightforward.
Yeah, but it's more than that. It's about the genre and the feel of it. Like one of the things I've discovered I'm good at, and I'm going to develop this skill as much as I can, is that I know what something is supposed to look like once I get enough of the author's intention and what their building blocks are. And it's what I'm saying is that the bones are proper. You are showing us a whole cadaver, and oh my goodness, Mrs. Freeman, why do you have a cadaver in your basement, and why did you show us this cadaver? Uh, you know the it's it's like one of the things that I always like. I've got some verses that I turn over in my head as I consider myself and I consider how I should move forward in things. And one of the things that always comes back to me is that I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Um, the stories, pieces of art, are either divinely inspired or demoniacally expired. Uh, Things like what was what's more than Graylin Pete's mother's name? Um, her
Marion Zimmer Bradley.
Thank you very much. Marion Zimmer Bradley wrote a book subverting all of King Arthur, and there's more incest than there really should be, and they're vaguely homosexual and all this different stuff, and it's malformed. It's malformed even in the description. The relationship of King Arthur and Lancelot and Percival and other people, were never homosexual in any sort of regard, but rather the height of friendship, respect, and honor from liege lord to knight to brother to brother to brother from another mother. The whole thing is a subversion. It is malformed. It was created to destroy, to fail, to hurt others. Even if the intention of Marion Zimmer Bradley was to write a good book with the things that she likes in it, it created something that would do harm. That, like, if I didn't think it would whet the appetite of publishers, I'd go around buying up copies and destroying them. To try and blot out such a thing, and this with other stories. Of course, there are too many stories to do that too. But with things like Marymae and the Witch's Flower, Swan Knight's Son, Iron Chamber of Memories, Rachel Griffin, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Blame, Pluto, and just a whole bunch of things as I'm roving my eye across my room, Galaxy's Edge. These things are created as what they are supposed to be. And while something like Blame and JoJo's isn't necessarily, is not demoniacally inspired, but I wouldn't say they're divinely inspired other than the usual muse. Something like Galaxy's Edge, I believe, is very, uh, not quite Christian, but very, very Christian adjacent. It's superversive to Star Wars. Star Knight is superversive to Star Wars. Combat Frame Exceed is superversive to Gundam. Um, uh, what was the other one? You know, uh, it just works, and it's supposed to look forward. It's like looking at a vase that carries water. You can put flowers into it, and the room is made more beautiful. It is aesthetically pleasing and mathematically perfect. A master sculpted these things and laid them out with the intention of creating a masterwork. Now, of course, I'm not saying that Mary May and the Nightmare Man is going to be entered into the halls of Western canon. I think that might be a little high, but I'm saying that
If
it
I can
is.
brighten the lives of my readers, that's enough for me.
Oh, absolutely. I'm kidding with that stuff, but it's the creation of something appropriate to itself. And that's something I strive for my own works. I'm not looking to create something that says anything except what my muse gives me to say. And even if I want to say something about how totally kick ass it is for knights to be driving light speed motorcycles across ring worlds to do battle with the black swans and their entropy engine, that's all it's supposed to be. Not.
Look, Ben. All
Yes.
I want to do is I want to write a scene as silly as the United States of Smash scene in My Hero Academia and make it just as unironically awesome. That is my benchmark for that reason. Because that line in a vacuum should be way too silly and dumb to work. And it works like gangbusters in the moment. It makes me tear up when I watch that scene. And then I realize that he just punched a dude while yelling United States of Smash. If I can ever reach that perfect pinnacle of cheesiness baptized into beauty, then I will have achieved my life's goal writing. I will have made it.
I
That's
think you
my
guys are.
that is
I think you're definitely hitting on something, Ben. And I think Christ says, have faith like a child. And one of the things with children is they simply are like they're not trying to be anything else. As we become older, we start, for better or worse, like trying to adapt ourselves or put on faces. You get more self-aware and try and do stuff. And in a lot of fiction that's ironic, it has the same feel as when you're an adult trying to, be something you're not, when sometimes just being just the simple being what you are made to be, I think harkens beauty in a way that you are describing. That's right.
Hmm.
I think dinner is ready, so I'll probably have to sign off soon. But I've very much enjoyed talking to you guys. I'm very humbled and excited about the response to Mary May. I'm so glad you guys have enjoyed it and that it's, I've had this story for so long, and to know that it's a you know good quality product everyone's enjoying, and I accomplished what I set out to do and some. I feel like. makes me very happy and excited.
It certainly
And I
looks like success so far, and I look forward to uh, Marymae and the uh, Wood
I think
Axe
we came up with
Juggalo or something. But
we came up with some funny ideas when we did the live stream for the Kickstarter. I will probably take a
Mary
pause
May
for
and the
the.
Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh my gosh.
Marymae all
Have you
grown
have
up.
you seen have you guys seen there's a crossover of Doom Guy and
Animal
uh
Crossing.
Animal Crossing,
Oh,
yes.
it's amazing.
So now that it's been a successful launch, I may take a bit of a pause to actually get my house set up because the little one is mobile now and I'm in trouble and I need to get things in places and off the floor. And holidays coming up, but hopefully um I'm gonna start working on my novel. Right now I just call it the Tree Book. That'll probably be my next project while I mull over what to do next with Mary May and see what adventures she gets. So hopefully next year I've also like especially doing the local shows inspires me to try and get some more things done so that I have more content to sell to the people around here and all over the world. I know I got at least a couple of ebooks purchased from someone in the UK and someone in the Canada, so it's going global. Mary May is global.
Fantastic.
All right. Well, I hope you guys have a wonderful Sunday, and however else long you're on the live stream. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful week as well.
Thank you kindly. And it was a pleasure to have you, Miss Freeman. Congratulations on your success.
Thank you so much.
Hmm.
All right, signing off.
So, like, at this point, the Wrights basically have this gigantic extended family of writers, uh, which are basically their children. It's like you.
Jaji is literally my author mom.
I think I actually said that to her. Hold on, I sent a tweet to her through the Pinkertons Ghosts, and I think I said something like your what did I say? Extended writer children are prospering with a link to the live stream.
Since Jaji introduced my husband and I, our little one, the fan baby. Instead of
Jotaro
grandbaby,
Kuja.
it's fan baby.
Excuse me.
I have no idea how to sign off. I am
It,
very confused and
you
lost.
you
Just
just
disconnect from the live stream.
just yeah.
If you do it in
Oh, here we
Discord,
go.
that would
Okay.
do it.
Yeah, I don't know how to work Discord very well sometimes. So here we are. Found it. All right, gonna go eat some curry. Bye, guys.
Bye. So what? Are you like a nephew or are you like a son? That's the real question. I know I'm that like third cousin who shows up and sulks in a corner and then argues with the patriarch on occasion. But you, what are you?
What am I?
What
Good
are you?
question. Uh, J- I yeah. I think most of us have more of a relationship with Jashi than John.
Yeah.
I feel as if I am treated much more nicely by the rights than I deserve to be. About that.
They're fantastic people. Ah,
Yes, it's very important. What you see online and what you see in real life doesn't always match up. Not that I dislike John online either. I did not. I never disliked John, even his online persona. However, he is much less frightening in the real world, though he's frightening in a different way.
I don't see it. But then again, I've kind of had a varied and storied life to the point where as long as somebody isn't screaming at me, I more or less go, yeah, look at you. I know, like it's like one of those things where like if you've lived enough, like having somebody ponderous like that, sure, it fills you with awe and respect. But once you like meet enough people who fill you with awe and respect, like they have to like add that fear element. Like one of my previous bosses. Oh, I feared that man.
But
Fantastic.
did you respect him?
Yes. Oh yes. Uh, yes. It was mostly fear, but there was respect in there.
Well, Ben, I will give you some credit with the Pinkerton's ghost stories. You mentioned that you're very good at seeing what other authors are trying to do, and yes, you are. You have a knack for this.
I hope to
You have
turn
a
it into.
talent for it.
I hope to turn it into a talent that brings me money.
It's so specific. Not gonna
it's,
be easy.
it's not going to be easy, but like the more I do editing with Shaji, the better off it'll be. And honestly, if I can sort of pick up where she's gotten a little success and take it to the next level, or where Brian Niemeyer has taken it, I will be a happy man. All right. Um, by the way, the we did I did do a live stream with Geek Gab yesterday, and it went very well. I read out my portion of the short story for the Geister Hounds, where where he comes across that bonfire,
Yes,
and he puts his hand on the biker helmet, and he sees all the coral growing out of the people.
yes.
Oh, you
That
say you listen to it, right?
I did.
Okay, God.
No. I did.
Okay, good.
I liked it quite a bit.
But it set various characters into shuddering and fear, which works for me. Uh, I've also discovered that my tolerance for horror is way higher than everyone else's, because it was like, oh, what is this coral growing out of people? And I'm like, yeah, coral growing out of people. Look at that. A poker with a stick. Ooh, the pink stuff sparks.
Neato.
This pink stuff coming out of his head sparks. What does it mean? But anyway.
I've noticed that my stories generally between all of ours, mine are by far the simplest, which is not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a thing that I've noticed
Hmm.
with the Pinkerton stories. You and Ken are trying all of these crazy ideas, and I'm like, so what if he met werewolves? And then I just kind of put my hands out, in that square shape, wave them apart, and go point upward, give that expression, and go, huh?
Huh?
Where he met werewolves, and then they go, next story. So what's your concept? All right, so I've been thinking this over, and what if he is attacked in a diner,
It hurts.
and then you just go, and then you just kind of stop, and then you go, you stand up in the background, just start slowly applauding. The whole room rises,
Oh my goodness.
and then I just sit down, wipe a tear from my eye,
Giving
go,
me
gentlemen.
anxiety.
I
What
think
is
this is
this? Stop.
finally come up with my masterpiece.
Oh my goodness. This, like, I'm getting a headache. Like, this is like,
Everybody,
oh.
you and Ken have these crazy complex ideas, and I'm like, so how about this? Sean's in the city, and he goes into a warehouse, and a werewolf attacks him, and you're like, do it, write it, let's go. Or Sean goes to the forest, and there's a creepy door, and he punches it,
Oh my goodness.
and you're like, there's a story there. I could see it.
I mean, it's true. There are stories there. I see them, but it's more like how you're describing it is giving me like heart palpitations, because it's like please, please. At
And
least.
you're like, so I traveled to the countryside, and I had all of these secret relationships, and I'm like, so anyway, after Sean walked into the warehouse,
Oh,
a werewolf attacked him.
oh my goodness.
That's it. That's the story. The end. And they go, well, how does he resolve this? And they go, all right, I see what you're saying. Definitely needs an ending, so what if he shoots the werewolf?
Oh my goodness. Oh.
And then the werewolf dies. The end. And then you go, you know what? Winner.
Yep. And I pat you on the head and I give you a treat and I say, let's do it faster next week, please. My sleep schedule can't put up with it. And neither can my heart. What are you doing to me?
This, which reminds me, we better go so I could write this week's story, everybody.
Yes. Get me that plot outline.
It is 9:30 right now, anyway. So.
Plot outline.
Dun 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 dun. That's all,
You fool!
folks.
You've hurt the